Okay, this will be standard 66, solving by factoring. Okay, so we will solve quadratic equations, and you are used to seeing just the trinomial part, ax squared plus bx plus c, and you're used to factoring it. The only difference here is that we've turned them into equations. We have an equal to 0 part, and so the first couple steps will be what you already know. You're going to factor the quadratic using the box method or grouping, whichever you prefer. Then, this is what will be different. You'll set each factor equal to 0, and then you're going to solve each equation. So you're typically going to have 2 answers for this standard for every problem. So here's example 1. So when we go to factor, like we know how to do already, since you guys are great at it, we're going to actually ignore the equal to 0 part. We don't need that right now. We're just going to focus on the x squared plus 6x minus 27. So I'm going to go and do my x, because whether I use box or grouping, I know I always start with my x. And so my a times my c would be negative 27 in the top of my x, and then my b term, which is 6, will be in the bottom, so I need something that's going to multiply to the top, add to the bottom, and I can think off the top of my head, since I'm getting really good at factoring, that positive 9 times negative 3 will give me negative 27, and positive 9 plus negative 3 will give me positive 6. So those are my 2 factors. I will do grouping for this problem, and then I will do the box for the next, just to kind of get practice with both. So with grouping, we're going to replace this middle term with our 2 terms that we came up with. So I'm going to rewrite the problem. X squared plus 9x minus 3x minus 27. And then I do have my equal to 0 that, again, I'm going to bring down, but I'm going to ignore still. So with grouping, I'm going to group the first 2 terms and then my second 2 terms. So out of my first group, I know I can factor out an x, and that is it. So that technically means I'm dividing both terms by x. So I have left inside the parentheses an x plus 9. And then out of my second group, it looks like I can factor out a negative 3. So I'm dividing both terms on the inside of the parentheses by negative 3. And what I have left on the inside of the parentheses would be x plus 9. I'm going to bring down my equals 0. So as you see here, my 2 factors that I will bring down would be x minus 3 and x plus 9. Again, making sure that inside of my parentheses with grouping, they are the same, so I know I did it correct. And here comes the different part. So now I have x minus 3 times x plus 9 equals 0. So we want to find what values x can be. So we are going to set them both equal to 0 separately. So off to the side, I have x minus 3 equals 0 and x plus 9 equals 0. And now all you have to do is solve these. They are simple one-step equation. So with this first equations, I have x minus 3 equals 0, so I'm going to add x to the other side add 3 to the other side to get x by itself. So I now have x equals positive 3, which is one of my answers, and I'm going to box. Over here I have x plus 9 equals 0, so I know, since it's addition, to cancel out the 9 and move it to the other side, I'm going to subtract. And so I now have x equals negative 9. And that is my second value for x that I'm going to box. So make sure to box both of those answers, because as you see, there's a lot of work here, so your teachers need to see your exact answers. So what this means is both 3 and negative 9 are solutions to this equation. That means if I were to plug in 3 to my original equation, it would make the equation true, as well as -9. If I was to plug in -9, it would make the original equation true. And I'm actually going to do that for you just to show you. So I had x squared plus 6x minus 27 equals 0. So I'm going to start with plugging in 3. Again, this is just to check your answers to make sure you get them right. So plugging in 3 to x, I have 3 squared plus 6 times 3 minus 27 equals 0. So 3 squared is 9 plus 18 minus 27 equals 0. Sticking with order of operations, 18 plus 9 is 27 minus 27 equals 0. 0 equals 0. That is true. So I know I did it correct, and 3 is an actual value of x. Okay, then I'm going to check x equals -9. So I have my original equation, x squared plus 6x minus 27 equals 0. So I can plug in -9 for x. So -9 squared plus 6 times -9 minus 27 equals 0. So I have -9 squared is positive 81. And positive 6 times -9 is negative 54. Bring down my minus 27 equals 0. Continuing with my order of operations, left to right, 81 minus 54 is 27 minus 27 that I'm going to bring down equals 0, and 27 minus 27 is obviously 0, so 0 does equal 0. So again, that one is correct as well. So you can always double check your answers. Example 2. Okay, this one I will do the box method. Just for those of you that prefer that, we're still going to start with our x. So my a times my c, again ignoring my equal to 0 part. A times c, 3 times 20 is 60. And then I have my b term, which is -17 at the bottom. So two factors that multiply to the top and add to the bottom. I have -5 and -12. Now, as you can see, I had to think about that off the top of my head. If you're someone who still struggles with coming up with your factors, please, please, please take the time to write them out like we have shown in the previous videos. Okay, so I now will do my box method. And I'm going to put my first term, which is 3x squared. My two terms that I came up with would be -5x and -12x. And my last term, which is positive 20. Again, please don't put 0 in your last box. Do not get confused. Ignore the 0 for the time being. Okay, let's factor out each row and each column. So this first row, I can factor out an x. This bottom row, I see that out of -12x and positive 20, I can factor out a -4. That's my greatest common factor. Keeping in mind, I did a negative because that first box is negative. Okay, and so my first column, I noticed I can factor out a 3 and an x. In my second column, I can factor out a -5. So my two factors are x minus 4 and 3x minus 5. And again, I still have my equal to 0. So at this point, this is when I'm going to solve and set them both equal to 0. So I have x minus 4 equals 0. And I have 3x minus 5 equals 0. So this first one is only a one-step equation. I know because it's a -4, I'm going to add 4 to cancel it out. So I get x equals positive 4. And over that's one of my answers I'm going to box in. And over here, I have 3x minus 5 equals 0. This turns into a two-step equation. I'm going to first move the 5 over, so think back to your two-step equation skills that you guys are all amazing at. And that cancels that out. I have 3x equals positive 5. And I know 3 times x, in algebra, to cancel things out, you do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplication would be division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I get x equals 5 over 3. I'm going to actually just leave it as a nice clean fraction. And those are my two answers. I am losing time on the video, so I'm not going to go through and check, but just know that you can go through and check. You can even type it in your calculator to make sure those two work. Here are the You Try problems, so make sure you please attempt both problems to get your full credit, and bring your notes to class tomorrow.